Hello, Miami. This is 305 Sports Now, your home podcast and channel for all things Miami sports related. I am Will, and joining us today is a very special guest. He is an occasional host on 560 WQAM Sports Radio and the host of the Locked On Canes podcast, which is available on every podcast platform and available free on YouTube. This is the one and only Mr. Alex Donno. Alex, how's it going?
I'm doing great, and I see we shop at the same stores.
Yeah, we do.
Based on our headwear. So I'm so happy to be here, man, and you do an awesome job. I see your stuff all over the place, man. Keep crushing it.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate it, man. I really appreciate it. I hope to be like you one day, man. That's like the goal.
You know. Thank you. I think you can do even better. Set the bar a little bit higher.
I'll try, man, bro. But you're a household name, bro. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Again, I appreciate you coming on. I know that you're a very, very, very busy guy, hosting Hawkman and Crowder and doing the podcast and so on. But I have to ask a question since, you are the Kane specialist over at Locked On and so on. And we're wearing, the cool hats in particular. What the hell happened this season with the Miami Hurricanes, man? I mean, losses to Middle Tennessee, losses to Duke, a very disappointing offensive performance, I would say, at least in the red zone against A&M. And of course, let's not even talk about Florida State since we're both alums of the University of Miami.
It's been an eye-opening experience for me. People were warning us, including Mario himself, about growing pains, but I just chose to ignore those warnings because I thought, you know what? A lot of these same players went 7-5 with pretty poor coaching. I like not Josh Gattis. I like Rhett Lashley, the former offensive coordinator. But outside of Lashley, I didn't like a whole lot of the people that were on the Manny Diaz staff. So, okay, if a lot of these same players went 7-5 with those coaches, and you got some good guys in the transfer portal, we should be winning 9 or 10 games. I fell for that trap. I did. And I think the expectations were like that for me and a lot of other people. And so when you fall so short of meeting those expectations, it can create just a completely befuddling experience. And it's caused a lot of people to say, wait, were we sold, a bill of goods with these coaches? Is Cristobal a fraud? I see people saying that. A lot of people are questioning the coordinators, especially the offensive coordinator, Josh Gattis. Oh, we got it all wrong. Look at this waste of money. We're never going to be good again. I have been preaching patience for the last few months, and I will continue to do so because I think, big reasons why Miami has struggled so much. The warning signs have been there in a lot of cases with the roster. When you see, and we're going to talk about this later, I know, so we'll circle back to it. When you see some parents complaining on Twitter about their kids getting a lack of playing time, when you hear reports about somebody this week, reportedly Thad Franklin, walking out on a practice because allegedly he's upset about how far he's fallen on the depth chart. And then you hear the stories the last few years about, Manny Diaz basically running a country club. And the night before that FIU loss that we all remember from a few years ago, several players, including the quarterback at the time, Jaron Williams, missed curfew, were out partying. There were no repercussions. He got to play in the game. So he kind of picked and choose when to punish guys, when not to. I know I've already said too much for some of you because oh, here he goes. He's just going to blame the previous staff on all this. It's part of it, guys. It's part of the reason why these guys just aren't tough enough and why I think you need a lot of roster turnover. So that's number one for me. And my understanding on Mario Cristobal is when he came in, I think he had a better grasp of what this roster really was than I did because he's had conversations about this. I think he's hoping to get a lot of roster turnover to get his guys in. Now, with that said, recruiting is going to be very important. Transfer portal is going to be very important. I put a lot of the blame on the talent, lack thereof, and on the roster, but it's not only on that. I'm not going to be the guy who only blames players because at the same time, I do think some of the coaches could have done a better job meeting these guys in the middle, right? I do look at some of the lack of offensive adjustments and the offensive scheme being pretty vanilla and being pretty predictable most Saturdays. And I kind of wonder if Gattis, the offensive coordinator, especially the first few games when Miami's offense really struggled, could have incorporated a little bit more of what Tyler Van Dyke was comfortable with last season. Now, I do think in this last game against Georgia Tech, I think we have a pretty good idea that Jakari Brown is the type of quarterback this offense needs.
Yeah.
I'm not saying he's better than Van Dyke right now or would give the team a better chance to win right now than Van Dyke, but I think Jakari Brown's profile with what a dual threat guy he is going to give that type of quarterback, whether it's him and somebody else in the future, would give this offense a better chance to win. So I think that's a big part of it, and I think that I think that a lot of these guys, for better or for worse, who didn't commit to play for these coaches, have given up on these coaches a little bit. Maybe the coaches have given up on them a little bit. So I do think that this can and will get better through more roster turnover, but I do think it's been a failure in many cases on the players and a failure in some cases on the coaches as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. When Morrow got hired, um, as lackluster as Manny Diaz might have seen as a head coach and the whole country club atmosphere, the more players coach aspect of things, the Canes were only 8 points away from being 10-2. You know, so I personally felt that, you know, with Cristobal coming in, there's no reason why we can't win 10 games. I thought that although they said the wide receiver position was going to be a weakness of this football team, I still felt that, you know, Jacoby George was a stud, you know, under Rhett Lashlee's system. Keyshawn Smith had 5 touchdowns last year, you know, so I figured he was going to take that next step, you know, and then of course, Rashad Smith is a burner, you know, at the slot position. I'm a huge Xavier Restrepo fan. You know, when I saw a kid as a freshman, I knew he was going to be, he looked like Braxton Berrios to me, you know, and so on. So I saw a lot of potential with the offense that I'm like, well, there's no reason why they can't go 10-2, but they're not, you know, disastrous loss of Middle Tennessee, you know, a humiliating loss of Florida State, you know, and Duke. And I just think that, you know, from a player's, from the eye test, I would say the defense has struggled as well. They've given up a lot of big plays, and it's kind of sad to me that it took about 10 games to put Cam Kitchens way up in center field, you know, where he could cover, you know, pretty much an umbrella of the field. That's why I think he got those 3 picks, because he was able, because they put him out much deeper and they played James Williams a little closer to stop the run. But that being said, you know, I never expected to lose to Middle Tennessee. I never expected to lose to Duke at home, especially. And I thought we'd run over Florida State. Lo and behold, Florida State was a major surprise. You know, but my thing in particular is I'm just wondering, since there has been occasions with at least the front seven of the defense has played well. We have Mesidor, Taylor. We've seen Harvey play well. Corey Flagg has been a surprise. People thought Corey Flagg was the weak link of the linebacking core. In many games this season, he has been your leading tackler, you know, and so on. I'd like to see what happens with Kevin Steele, with Cormani McLean, and hopefully Damari Brown, you know, in particular, you know, if he does, you know, decide to go with the University of Miami, in particular, to see, you know, what happens when they restructure the roster or they bring in extra cornerbacks. I think that's something we're going to target, you know, in the transfer portal. But to me, I agree with you. Gattis's offense has been absolutely atrocious this year. You know, they're averaging 25 points a game, and that's only because they put up 35 points against Georgia Tech. They have 30 touchdowns this year. 10 of them were against Bethune-Cookman. All right, we went 9 straight quarters without scoring a touchdown on a team with 4-star offensive players. It baffles me how bad this offense has been. And I will give him credit, you know, for a couple of things. He has adapted. He has gone full spread at times, i.e. the North Carolina game. But his offense takes so long in terms of play calling, and it takes so long in terms of route development, that I think it gets a guy like TVD killed. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. As far as Josh Gattis goes, I am of 2 minds with this one. I would probably prefer to move on and either find a different coordinator, or I would not be opposed to elevating Frank Ponce, the quarterback's coach, who has offensive coordinator experience, actually did a pretty nice job with Appalachian State, elevating him. And because remember, Gattis is also the wide receivers coach.
Yeah.
Which it's kind of crazy how, you know, I know they've been injured a lot throughout the season, but you kind of would have thought the wide receivers would look a little bit better this year. So, you know, if you were to move on from him, maybe you elevate Ponce and then you go out and find a wide receivers coach to replace that vacancy. At the same time, if you're going to ask me today, do I think Josh Gattis will still be the offensive coordinator next year? 60% of me says yes, and I will explain why. I think Mario Cristobal is going to value continuity to a point where he doesn't want to make it look like, hey, we just had a bad season and now I'm firing coordinators, because that only it looks from the outside looking in, whether it's true or not. You don't want to make it look like you're in an unstable situation, and then that could potentially affect recruiting negatively. Some might say if you get rid of Gattis, it would affect recruiting positively. I don't know for sure if that's the case, right? But you don't want to make it look like there's chaos. Hey, after the first year, I'm firing coordinators. So continuity is valuable. Also, Mario knows better than we do, exactly what Gattis is doing related to what Mario wants him to do, because as Oregon fans tell me every single day, you guys shouldn't be blaming coordinators. Mario, he's a micromanager. That's his offense. You can't scapegoat the coordinators for it. I mean, Mario knows better than we do. If Gattis is just kind of doing what he wants, Cristobal is going to know that better than any of us. So I think for those reasons, stability. And also, some of Miami's players have said this. I heard Will Mallory say it last week, and Xavier Restrepo also said it. They endorsed Gattis. Not that you would expect them to say otherwise, but they endorsed him, specifically saying, you know what? Things always get better in year 2 of an offense when you have continuity. And they did reference that, with Rhett Lashley, who we were both praising earlier, the former Miami offensive coordinator, things were a lot better second year of his offense than they were the first year of his offense. So there might be a belief there that, hey, this is more of a problem with our talent or our players not getting it, and next year they're going to get it. This is going to look a lot better. So for that reason, I could see him sticking around. Now, some things we don't know behind the scenes. Because we had one player's parent complaining specifically about Gattis, but again, the whole parent thing, it's wild to me. But if there are maybe more negative issues with him behind the scenes than we know, that could be a factor. Is he pulling his weight in recruiting? Because recruiting is like the most important thing for Mario. Like, the effect of his coaches on the recruiting trail is so important. Is he pulling his weight there or not? I don't have any reason to believe he's not. Because I haven't heard like any specific stories of, oh, he's not working hard on the trail. I think he does work very hard on the trail. So I think for continuity's sake, he's probably back next year.
Yeah, I think we should move on personally. 2 names I brought up, a couple days ago were Tom Herman and Garrett Riley over at TCU.
Oh, yeah, I would love to have either of them for sure.
Yeah, because Tom Herman was mentioned last year before the firing of Manny Diaz when Rhett Lashley got the job at SMU. And I mean, the guy's a proven play caller, so that's I think that's a great benefit. And Garrett Riley, TCU's putting up a ton of points. As we know, they're a top 5 team. So I think for the way that the South Florida athletes at the skill position are at wide receiver, at running back, I think that kind of an offense would work best with our athletes. But also, as far as Mario goes, if Oregon fans are saying that to you in particular, well, even if he does micromanage, he's at least proven that he's somewhat adaptable. As we mentioned, he has gone on many occasions full spread. My thing is that although they've gone full spread, the route development still takes a while to develop. And at the way the offensive line has been depleted this year, in particular, losing 4 or 5 guys, at the O-line position, a quarterback's best friend in a struggling offensive line is a quick passing game. Example, going off topic for a quick second, look at Tua. All right. The Miami Dolphins, Tua's putting up these magnificent numbers. Tua got his head bashed in, early in the year a couple times. So why is he not any sacks? The ball's out within 1.5 to 2 seconds, of it being centered to him, so I think that's something that Gattis just doesn't want. His rug routes take forever, which is fine. I actually like his rug routes, but they take forever to develop. So if you don't block or an incoming blitzer comes in, bye TVD, and so on. And then of course, the deep posts and, I feel like there's not enough swing passes or checkdowns to the tailback. A guy like Rooster, who used to burn, in single coverage, used to burn guys last year, is not getting, enough passes thrown to him, when the wide receivers are covered. So those are things that I see of the Gattis offense that really bother me. His trip sets are way too close to the tackle position.
Yes, I agree completely.
Yeah, that really bothers me. I mean, he just bothers me.
You're triggered.
Yeah, he just bothers me. And then every time I see TVD, it feels like an eternity at the sideline to get the play, or even Ja'Cory as well. It drives me nuts, So, I mean, I do think that moving forward, I think Ja'Cory Brown does fit what Mario wants to do more, because if you remember over at Oregon, he did have mobile quarterbacks Justin Herbert gets a lot of praise for his arm, but he couldn't move. He moved a lot at Oregon, and also we saw Brown last year, over at Oregon as well. That when they won that Ohio State game, he was very mobile as well. So I think Mario does like the dual threat quarterback, as well. So I think Ja'Cory at the moment fits what the Canes want to do, and also since the line is depleted, he can move around and save himself from getting killed, over in over at behind the line of scrimmage. So those are things about Gattis, man. Like I wouldn't I know they're gonna keep him because Mario does want continuity, but I wouldn't cry if they let him go.
I don't think anybody would. I think very few people will cry if they let him go. And you bring up great points on Brown. And I think another thing about Brown is he really sparks the rest of the running game. Like I don't think it's a coincidence that Miami just had probably their best rushing performance of the season last week, because he takes so much pressure off the offensive line, and he really sparks the running game. And I love the way he runs. I mean, running out of the quarterback position like him, he's always getting extra yards, fighting for extra yards. My favorite stat from that game against Georgia Tech was 77 of his 87 rushing yards were after contact.
Yeah.
So he was fighting for everything he got, and it's gonna be a lot tougher against Clemson. If we're gonna assume that Brown is gonna start, I think he probably will. There's gonna be a lot of guys in the backfield gunning for his head. So we'll see. We'll see if he can produce anything like that against Clemson.
Yeah, I see the offense be more or less the same, against Clemson that it was against Georgia Tech, just because like he still needs his reps. As far as at the quarterback position. So I do expect a lot of bubble screens. I do expect a lot of, RPOs, coming in for Ja'Cory. The only thing I did say, if you're going to run that offense, you have to block like everybody, the tackle position in particular, especially on the bubble screen. If the DNs are going to go in, you can't let them bat the ball down, or a blitzing linebacker. The wide receivers, which have been it's also a problem too. The wide receivers don't block.
Yeah,
they're terrible. I remember in the A&M game, Romello Brinson got blown up, and then Brashard Smith got blown up because Romello got blown up.
I remember that clip now. Yeah, I remember watching that in one of the film reviews. That was kind of sickening.
What? Poor kid. That's the reason why I feel he can't get on the field. Because he just doesn't block. And I was telling, my friend, a couple of days ago on the show that the one thing about Al Golden, and again, hope Hurley Brown forgives me if he hears this show, because he loves Al, but I'm gonna be honest, Al wasn't very good at putting personnel in the best positions to win, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. But he knew how to recruit talent, because Amon Richards, Stacy Coley, Braxton Berrios, those guys, they could catch anything thrown at them. But they could also maul, any incoming defensive back. I don't know if you remember, Alex, when Mark Richt's second year, when we played Notre Dame in almost the Orange Bowl at Hard Rock,
felt like the Orange Bowl that night.
What was that? I'm sorry.
It felt like the Orange Bowl.
Oh my God, 70,000 plus, man! It was a great atmosphere. But on one of Travis Homer's touchdowns, Braxton Berrios took the cornerback all the way to the end zone with him. So I don't know if you remember that, but it was a great scene. Kirk Herbstreit loved that, so that's what I remember as well. They had it in slow motion that it was Braxton Berrios. So that's the thing, and these guys just don't block. And I do feel that the incoming tight ends, because I've seen their huddle, like Riley Williams, Nathaniel Joseph, and I think it's Bobby Washington is the wide receiver. Am I correct? Or is it Robbie?
Robbie's the wide receiver. Yeah, but Bobby's the linebacker.
They should have given him different names. Robbie, Bobby, but he also could block as well, and they're shifty. So I think that we're going to see a much greater change in the wide receiver position, not just in terms of playmaking, but also at sparking runs.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And I think all three of the tight ends have upside in blocking, probably Williams even more than the other two, and they're all big. Like they're all 6'5", 6'6", the three tight ends coming in. So I'm excited for that.
Yeah, so am I. I'm completely excited as well. You want to talk a little about recruiting?
Oh man, I love it this time of year. Yeah, although this has kind of been a negative week so far. So I'll go wherever you want to take it.
Yeah, let's go first with Jaden. Okay, that caught a lot of ears, this past week. It kind of stung though that he decommitted and just committed to Florida right away. I did feel, I get, they didn't look very good against Florida State, and the offense again looked very vanilla, against Florida State all throughout the year. But I do think, I'm not going to bash the kid for leaving. I don't do that. I teach high school. To me, these kids are like babies.
Hmm.
In particular, this is not a bash Jaden Rashada type of deal. So I mean, if he wants to go, he can go. I mean, Florida's had a couple good games lately, so I really don't blame him if he sees an upside with the Gators. But don't you think that maybe it might be a slight mistake, since next year looks like it might be, especially if TVD does transfer, more of an open competition?
Here's the way that I look at it with Jaden. I get the sense, talking to a number of different people, that he really wanted Florida all along, and so it's like it's fine. Like and if anything, when he committed to Miami in the first place back in late June, I think that was saying more about Florida not having their what together,
Okay.
and so he kind of chose, like, I'll tell you this. I hope I'm not betraying anybody's confidence when I tell you this, but because and I don't think this narrows it down a whole lot, because I know a few different people who were out at the Elite 11 finals covering it and interviewing players. I was not there, but I know some people who were. And basically, like, where Rashada told somebody off the record that this was just a few days after he committed to Miami. It's like, I wanted to be a Gator. Like, I really wanted. So so it is what it is, man. I mean, listen, for me being a Miami guy saying that, I mean, it takes courage for me to even say that, but I think he really wanted to be a Gator. The Gators finally got their ducks in a row, and he decommitted. I do still think the majority of the guys who are verbally committed for the class of 2023 want to be Canes. I never really got the sense that Rashada wanted to be a Cane, because while, every week, good times, bad times, I see people like Ray Joseph and Antonio Tripp and Francis Maui Goa tweeting out all this love from Miami. I never saw Rashada do that. I think like the first 4 or 5 days after he committed to Miami were like the only times I ever saw him tweet about Miami. Like, I don't know. I think he just wanted to be a Gator. So I don't think I see what you're saying about the opportunity at quarterback. I don't think he really cares. I think he wanted to play in the SEC. I think he wanted to play for the Gators. So it's a big opportunity for Emory Williams, who's the remaining quarterback in the class. The only reservations I have about Emory, and like I think he can be great. He's not, he's mobile. Like he can pick up some yards with his legs. He's not like a real dual threat. He's not a Jakari Brown type. So we'll see, but he does have a quick release and he's very accurate. And if you have those traits, you can fit in almost any offense.
Yeah, I think that's why he's a 3-star, not a 4-star, because he comes from a small school. He just came out of he just basically he just got people's attention recently, especially the Elite 11. When he threw the ball, it looked like it was like 80 yards. He's got a cannon. Yeah. So I think he's a dark horse that people are sleeping on because of his quote unquote star status, in particular. But yeah, I mean, again, even if you lose Jaden Rashada, you still have opportunities in other classes to pick up the slack. Jakuri is still a true freshman. You have Emory Williams coming in. We don't know what's going to happen with Jake Garcia or Tyler Van Dyke. Jake's still pretty young. I do see Jake transferring, though. I will be honest. I think if you can see which one will transfer, I think it'll probably be Jake or both. I see Tyler Van Dyke, and if he does decide to hit the portal, I see TVD going and reuniting with Rhett Lashley over at SMU, because Tanner Mordecai, their quarterback, is a senior, and he already knows that system, and he knows he's going to get numbers, with Lashley. So, but I do think that more than likely, if TVD does stay, Jake's the one that's going to go, because he's going to be stuck, because the coaching staff already favors Jakuri, over Jake. It's unfortunate, though, because I think Jake was put in unfair situations, coming in during deficits, and that 3rd and 5 against Florida State, was not the best situation for the kid. So, that's unfortunate. What do you think about that, actually, in terms of how they balanced Jake this year?
It's not a fit. I don't really know why, because Jake has regressed throughout the season. Whereas a guy like Brown keeps getting better and better with time. And I think for Jake, when he threw all those interceptions in which game was that? Now I can't even think straight. When he threw all the interceptions, but it was the week
Duke.
before the Duke game. That's right.
Yeah,
it was the Duke game the week before.
Duke.
Yeah, so like he's looked shell-shocked ever since then. He threw those 3 bad interceptions against Duke. They basically barely let him throw the ball against Virginia, and the few times he tried to throw downfield, it's just the accuracy was all off. I think it's what my friend Troy Stratford refers to as head trash. Like, I think there's a lot of head trash with Garcia. And like you said it perfectly. He's going to be the odd man out because I think we've already seen the staff prefers Brown over him. I watched enough of Jake's high school tape for like 3 or 4 different high schools he played for. And he looked good everywhere.
Yeah.
I think he can be a good college quarterback somewhere, and it's probably best for him to find another opportunity, because if the opportunity is not going to materialize here, just it makes all the sense in the world for him to transfer. As long as he doesn't go to like a direct rival, and it'd be great. I'll wish him the best of success. As far as TVD goes, I'd like to say in my mind, it's maybe 50-50, probably better chance than not he stays. And I think whatever he decides to do is probably going to give you an idea how much he believes in the offensive coaching. Because, if he very quickly enters the portal, then it's going to say, okay, he probably doesn't think that they're going to give him the best chance to improve his NFL draft stock. If he does stay, then that means, hey, maybe he doesn't hate this offense as much as some people think that he does. And, to be fair to him and to Gattis, Van Dyke, injuries aside, was starting to click pretty well in this offense. And he was returning to a little bit of that 2021 form. So I could see it going either way with him. Now, if he does transfer, I still think they're going to bring in a veteran in the portal. If he doesn't transfer, then probably not. But if TVD transfers, I don't think they're going to say, yeah, we're good next year just with Brown, Emory Williams, and I don't know if Peyton Matoka has any. I think he does have another year of eligibility. I don't think they're going to be good with that quarterback room. I think they're going to try to get like a starting caliber guy from another program in the portal, if nothing else, to compete with Brown. Because, Will, for as bullish as I am on Jakari Brown, I don't just want to, hand him the starting job next year and say, oh, it's going to work great, because he's still very young. He's still very unproven. And if nothing else, it's nice to have a veteran in that room to teach him some habits, because he is still so young, and somebody to compete with him. So, if it's not TVD, I hope they bring in a veteran from another school.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I think they will bring another veteran from another school. If that's the case, I hope TVD doesn't transfer.
Yeah,
and I think, with a healthy offensive line and the beasts that are coming in, as freshmen next year, who, by the way, could both pass block and run block. So that's going to help him out a lot. I think that TVD will be fine. But if he does transfer, again, I see a little reunion between Rhett Lashley and TVD. Those two were simpatico, a year ago. And I miss Rhett Lashley. Just saying.
See, the thing is, like, I loved Rhett Lashley, but people start to forget the things we used to complain about, like how they could never pick up short yardage and how the running game was basically in the mud. But when it comes to the passing game, it was brilliant to watch.
It was my only complaint about Rhett Lashley, and it was my only complaint and it goes back to short yardage. I've never been a fan in a jumbo set putting your quarterback in shotgun.
No, I hate it.
Ever, because I feel like if it is like a quarterback draw, you're giving time for the D line and the front seven to adjust to being pushed back. So to get a bit of to get basically to regroup and get back in motion with either safeties or with their linebackers. So I've never been a fan of that. I do think because the running game wasn't that great is because we didn't have offensive linemen. We don't have offensive line with the exception of Zion Nelson and Jalen Rivers that are good run blockers. I think that's a reason why. So I think that's why it didn't work out so well in the running game, because Red always said, I have a power running game as well. I'm not just a one-trick pony with passing. But, man, when he passed well. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry. I love the guy, Okay, so Okunula, you've been talking a lot about him on your podcast, Lockdown Canes. People say it is Miami's recruit to lose. How do you feel? I'm not comfortable with him taking a visit to Florida. I know it doesn't mean anything because Cormani McClain took a visit and still threw up the U. Yeah. But at the moment, the pancake honcho is a mystery. What do you think?
Yeah, I know a couple people who cover Florida recruiting. His visit there, it just finished 3-4 hours ago. He was there for like 2.5 days in Gainesville. So I mean, he was there with his family. So I don't think he was like going out at 3 a.m. or whatever. He was there with his parents. So it was like a low key, unofficial visit, but he was there for a long time. The Gator fans are pretty cocky about it. I think at this time we don't know yet if he's scheduled like an official visit for Florida. He's got 2 official visits left that he can schedule, And now the Florida folks are thinking they're probably going to get one of those in December. I think he's rumored to be taking his official to Ohio State, I believe either this weekend or next. So I think that's probably going to be his final 2 official visits. He's been trending to Miami since early July or late June, right after he took his official visit to Miami. But the longer these things go, the more you start to get concerned, because when it's a player that, all the crystal balls in like early July started coming in Okunlola to Miami, and he still hasn't committed. He's not going to do so till December. Time is not on your side. Like when you're an early favorite, the longer it goes, the more it gives other schools a chance to jump in. And Florida's making a huge push. I spoke with head of football recruiting John Garcia from Sports Illustrated today, and he told me this could very well come down to a Miami versus Florida battle. I think Miami is still considered the favorite for Okunlola, and I know all the reptiles up in Gainesville are excited. He just visited there. I mean, he did just visit Miami less than 2 weeks ago as well, so he's done his due diligence on the Hurricanes program. You always feel good about Miami's chances for a player like that, because if there's one thing that Cristobal and Alex Mirabal have proven is they can develop O linemen and kind of help them take the next step. I mean, when you bring in Okunlola for a visit, you're like, hey, you remember Penei Sewell? He played for us. Like, they got a really good track record. Oregon's offensive line has just been stacked for the last few years. So I'm sure that that's something that's going to work in Miami's favor. So we will see. I think in this era of NIL and with how much competition there's been between Miami and Florida, because at certain points, I almost feel like sometimes like Mario and Napier, especially Napier, like care more about like taking something away from the other school than it's weird. Like it almost feels like Florida and maybe Miami as well, because of the whole Cormani thing, are like, not only do we want to recruit well, we want to take whatever we can from the Gators, or the Gators want to take whatever they can from Miami. So they're going to be fighting for at least like a half dozen more recruits before signing day. So anything can happen. I still think Miami's the favorite for Samson, but stranger things have happened.
Yeah, I think he's a favorite too for Samson. I think he just wants to weigh his options and do an official signing in December. I think that's his that's the way it used to be, before we started doing, early commit. So I think he just wants to do that. But speaking of another battle, Mark Fletcher, it's another Miami versus Florida battle. He's trending Florida, but I think if Thad Franklin, does enter the transfer portal and so on, there could be a spot for him in the Canes. And if we do keep Gattis, that might be a positive, because Gattis is a run first type of coordinator. So, I mean, we'll see. I really want Fletcher. I like those kinds of backs. I like the speedsters like Jalen Knight, and don't get me wrong, and Chris Johnson as well, who's another guy who's favored to come to the Canes. And I'm really excited about him too.
Actually, pump the brakes on that one a little bit on Chris Johnson, because within the last several days, it's Ole Miss has been actually trending heavier for him. Now, the only thing is, because if Lane Kiffin is about to, according to reports, he's about to leave Ole Miss high and dry for Auburn, that could change everything. But yeah, the last few days, because he had supposedly a very productive visit to Ole Miss, and they're now trending for him.
That's interesting. Thanks for bringing that up, because every crystal ball I saw had him going to the Canes, as far as that goes. But it doesn't surprise me, because he loves his offense and he loves his running backs. Does Lane Kiffin? But I mean, again, going Chris Johnson, Mark Fletcher, those are backs that could benefit from this offense. But I like those big backs, and I like those like fast backs like Jalen Lane, but some of those smashers, man, that they'll just run you over, like old school Najee Davenport that was fast, that could kill you. Those are always fun to watch. One thing I do like about the recruits, though, is that when this whole thing with Jaden started, and then you started hearing rumors, that you might get some more decommitments because Jaden Rashad will open the floodgates. I love Mauigoa, Aguirre, the Washington brothers, the Antonio Tripp as well, all basically saying, listen, we're not going to Florida. We're all in on Mario, because those are the kind of guys you want. You want players. I mean, I get the whole, like you hear online, they're not real true Canes. You hear a lot of that online. They're not real Miami Hurricanes. I'm like, well, Jaden was from Pittsburgh, California. No, he was not a true Cane. Kind of hard to say that, but guys that just come out on Twitter and say, listen, we're going to be with Mario. We're not even going to listen to Billy Napier anymore. those are the kind of guys that you want because they're bought into what you're doing. And I think it's important that, that we see that as fans, as well.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that, and that's the only thing that's going to get us through this really tough period we're in, and I think that's why something that I appreciate about Cristobal and recruits, whether it's guys who choose to play for him or even some of the ones who don't, they will all say, I appreciate how honest he is. Like he tells it, like, when you're going through this recruiting process, a lot of the coaches you talk to are just going to blow smoke. Oh yeah, you're going to come in here, you're going to get this and that, and you're going to be a starter. And I see you being a 4-year starter and all this. Where all Mario promises anybody is an opportunity. You have an opportunity to earn it on the field. And if there are things about your game that he doesn't like so much and he wants you to improve, he's going to tell you. Now, coaches don't always do that in recruiting visits. Coaches like, yeah, this guy has his warts, but I'm certainly not going to bring them up when I'm doing the recruiting visit because I don't want to offend him and whatever. But Mario brings up that stuff, and I think players appreciate the honesty, and so you like to think that the players who do commit to play for you are genuine about it because you're genuine with them. I think that's something he always tries to achieve.
So, Alex, so you're saying that Mario Cristobal doesn't dance in a living room like Nick Saban did for a player?
Oh, he might. And when Saban is dancing in the living room, you know how much a priority you are. But honestly, like, I would venture to guess that that Mario probably does certain things pretty similar to Saban since he is a Saban protege. It's not the only mentor he's had. Like he learned from Butch Davis long before he learned from Saban. And I think Mario's personality has always kind of been the same because I haven't brought this up too much on my shows, but I may have told this story once that my father was actually Mario's professor at one point
really?
around 90-91. Yeah, and my father is a high level math teacher, which is not something I was ever good at. So the apple fell very far from the tree. But I remember him telling me even before Cristobal became the head coach at Miami. I remember telling me years ago, like when Mario was an assistant, he's like, yeah, that guy aced my class, and that there were a couple of other football players in the class. I will not name any names who you thought would have been, oh, that guy's probably really smart. They were getting like B minuses. Mario was getting A pluses in those classes. So he's always been a hard worker like that.
Yeah, no, you can totally tell, And again, I like how direct he is. Like, with the parents being upset, that's been, sorry, it's super petty and it's super immature. To be honest with you, if you have a problem with a coach, go to the coaches, talk to the coach personally. And on top of that, let's be honest, all right? FBS, Division I football, NCAA, it's a minor league system for the NFL. So these guys right now, they're kind of semi-professional. We don't want to say that because it's considered amateur, but they're semi-pro athletes. If you want to get technical, it's the NFL's farm system. I think it's funny how it seems like high school when you have parents going up to you and saying, why isn't my kid playing? And so on. Like what happened with Kamari. I understand Kamari Rogers' father being upset, because if you see a bunch of freshmen playing and your son's not playing, even if he does weigh like 170 pounds, in particular, I get it, but I would email a guy like, hey, why? What does my son need to do?
Yeah.
Or the same thing with Keyshawn Smith, his mom only complaining that Josh Gattis said is the worst team I've ever coached. I mean, I've heard that. I'm around coaches all the time. That's kind of usual language for coaches, when they make mistakes. So I don't know what to say. I think the fact that he said, well, if you don't like it, come pick up your kid, and you can move on was very direct and to the point. And actually, I think I earned him a lot of respect from people who are doubting the fact that he could lead this football team.
Yeah, and you and I are both parents, so and you're also a teacher, so you probably understand this even better than I do because my son is yet to be 5 years old, but I don't know what you think you're accomplishing by complaining on social media about your son's coach. Like how anyone thinks that's going to make your situation any better. Like if anything, it's just going to embarrass your son and put them in an even worse position. And honestly, like you were hinting at this and I'll double down on it. When I see a player's parent complaining, to me, that's a lot more of a negative reflection on the player and the family than it is on the coach. And I don't want to disparage anyone because, like one of those parents I've interacted with, and I have every reason to believe they're a really, really nice person and probably just lost their cool and just lost control. Maybe if my kid is ever in a situation like that, I won't have any more self-control than they did. But before you send the tweet, just stop and ask yourself, am I going to help this situation? You can only hurt the situation by doing that.
Yeah, well, get upset. Like, you have a right to be upset.
Yeah.
And I understand Rogers' father being upset if he sees his classmates going out there and playing in mop-up duty, and he's not, he could ask the thing is that putting him on blast and embarrassing the coaching staff, is not exactly the way to do it. It's kind of, I said,
you're really embarrassing. You're really embarrassing Kamari. I feel like that's the only, that's the person you're really embarrassing at the end.
I'm sure Kamari was like, Dad.
Yeah, like, what did you do?
What are you doing? It's like one of those situations. But the one parent I do love on social media is Raul Laquita's dad.
Oh, yes.
I don't, hilarious.
I've heard about that. I don't fall. Yeah. The parents that I get a kick out of, and both of them, because I think they both tweet, are Antonio Tripp's parents. I love them. I don't know if I've seen Aguirre's dad tweeting, but I do remember I think I've seen those come up retweeted maybe.
Yeah. He's more active on Facebook.
Oh, that's probably why.
Yeah. And I think he's a member of Through the Smoke Facebook page, or one of these Miami Hurricane sites. And I think in one of them he said, forgive me if he's listening, but I may have to be paranoid. I think he said, don't worry, my son's coming. One of those.
That's awesome.
Yeah, when we'll see when my son's coming, and stuff like that.
And Popo said something similar to that.
Yeah,
he
did.
He even said in an interview, he was like, I'm going to be frank, we're coming to try to take people's spots. And I saw that. I loved it.
So do I. But like I said, those are Mario guys. Those are guys that, they're all in, they're bought in. And they're basically saying that we got you, so on. And one thing about I love about Raul is that not only could he tackle, in space, not only can he chase down the quarterbacks, he also could cover.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, he could also cover. If you look at his huddle film, he looks amazing, in coverage. And Malik, I'm not so sure, Bryant. He's already built like he's going to the
they complement each other very well, because Malik is more of like a hybrid defensive end,
he is actually
really elite pass rusher. So I think the two of them in that sense complement each other really well, because and maybe he can, but like you said, I don't have as much evidence about Malik in coverage where Raul, yes. So I think that the two of them could complement each other very well.
Yeah, on the film I've seen of Malik, there's they don't have film of him that he said I've seen of him like covering a tight end, past 10 yards. But in terms of bubble screens, in terms of swing passes, he'll get you. He'll get you. The one I've seen cover a little bit more deeply down the field is Raul. I've seen Raul cover tight ends. I've seen Raul, attack fade routes, on red zone situations. So he looks like you can more multifaceted in that regard. But as far as like, I'm ready to play, put me in, coach. Malik's a specimen, man. He's like 236 pounds and he's 6'2". I mean, he's just like a beast, so I'm really excited.
Yeah, and I didn't get maybe as elaborate of an answer as I'd hoped, but I on the Hawk and Crowder show the other day, I interviewed Edger and James, who's like he's a close family friend of Malik Bryant's family, and like I asked him about Malik, and he was like, hey, he's got the right attitude. He's hungry, that he's going to come in there and he's going to try and help turn this thing around. So I thought it was pretty cool. If I'd had more time with Edge, I would have maybe gotten into more detail on it. But since, we were talking about Edge's pro football life special that's coming out, I didn't want to turn it into like a Malik Bryant interview, but I did get a chance to ask him one question about Malik.
Yeah, it must have been nice to interview Edge, man. Edge is one of the greatest running backs in UM history.
Yeah, and he wasn't shy about saying, because he talked about just how everybody would show up, in the 90s on Green Tree, and they would just kick each other's butts and make each other better. Like he told me, it's like Green Tree practice fields made the NFL easier, because like when I got to the NFL, practices were easier, like with the Colts, than they were with, Butch Davis's Miami Hurricanes. And he even said, he's like, he's even said, I don't feel like the players that are there right now necessarily have that sort of mentality. So he, obviously, like any former Cane, he watches this team play on some Saturdays, and it probably just hurts for him to see them in the state that they've been in.
Oh, of course. It hurts all of them. You know, hurts all of them. I interviewed Leon Searcy, you know,
Oh,
and
I love him.
yeah,
Yeah.
he's great. Yeah, he tells great stories, by the way. You should, I don't know if you own his book, but his book's really good as well.
No,
Fourth
I
Down and
don't.
Damn.
Yeah.
Yeah, Fourth Down and Damn's a really good read. He tells a lot of stories, you know, in that book. I speak every so often with one of his closest friends, and he said that Leon and forgot what game it was. I think it was a Middle Tennessee game. He just lost it on social media.
Well, I spoke with on one of my I think it was my Thursday morning episode on Locked On Canes. I spoke with Kelvin Harris, who played with
Yeah.
Mario Cristobal, and he was like, he told me, he's like, after the Florida State game, he's like, I was so mad. He sent Mario like a text full of like expletives and
Yeah.
stuff. So he
Heard that
was
episode
not
was
shy.
funny.
He was not shy about that.
Yeah. And he's like, and Mario responded, if I didn't think I could turn this around, I would have stayed in Oregon.
And I love that. Like, I love to know he's saying that privately, not just publicly.
Yeah, no, of course. Alex, aside from being avid Cade fans, you and I, and aside from being both also Kane alums as well, you know, we're also, you and I, very, 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 very strong Batman fans.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I gotta ask you, Kevin Conroy, man, how badly did it hurt?
It stung when I found out that he passed, because we were talking about this a little bit off air.
Mm-hmm.
He was like, he was one of the quintessential Batmen, because I know that he doesn't get the same kind of love because you didn't see his face like in the suit, because he was the incredible animated series voice, and I thought that he captured the part so well. But the real ones know, like the real Batman fans know Kevin Conroy. So that was a kick. It was a kick to the groin for me to find that out. And like I've always said, like, when people ask me who my favorite Batman is, I usually say I say Michael Keaton, because that was like my first Batman, because I kind of grew up on the '89 movie and on Batman Returns. That was like my real first introduction to live action Batman. But I was also addicted to that animated series when I was a kid. So Conroy holds a special place in my heart.
And that series came out at the perfect time, because Batman Returns had just come out that summer.
Yeah.
And then they released the animated series, and then I remember when they got basically fired Tim Burton, and Michael Keaton didn't want to do any more Batman movies, and they started doing Batman Forever and Batman and Robin. I'm like, I'd rather watch the cartoons.
Yeah. Like I remember, like when it came out, I didn't think Batman Forever was that bad at the time, but I've rewatched it, and it's kind of a joke. And then Batman and Robin was way worse. Like at least like Batman Forever is kind of rewatchable. Batman and Robin is not. Like, it's so bad.
No, yeah, I mean, it was terrible. I don't know if you remember. Do you have a favorite episode in the animated series that you could think of?
Oh my goodness. I can't think of the specific ones now. I mean, I was always so obsessed with the Joker. I loved every time he showed up on screen, and Mark Hamill. I liked the animated movie they made, The Mask of the Phantasm. Like I thought that was like one of the better Batman movies.
It's
that
fantastic.
Again, like it's kind of lost in the vault because it doesn't get like replayed. A lot of people don't talk about it. But I remember, I don't know if I was like probably like 11, 12 years old when something like that came out, and I had the VHS tape. I must have watched that 1,000 times. But man, as far as I like the ones that had Mr. Freeze in them as well in the animated series. But yeah, and Poison Ivy too as well. I like the ones with Poison Ivy.
Yeah, my favorite episode, because I've seen it like 1,000 times, was I remember Almost Got Him, which is actually a classic, where all the villains sit together playing poker, and they all tell stories how they almost killed Batman.
Oh, yes, I remember that. Now, I probably haven't watched that in 20 years, but I remember that, where they talk about it and they do like the flashbacks. Right?
Yes, and then they find out that Batman was dressed up as Killer Croc, because Joker revealed that he had kidnapped Catwoman, and they really, really pushed the romance between Selina Kyle and Bruce Wayne, in that series, like really pushed it, which everybody loved. And when he finds out that he kidnapped her, which he didn't know about, he throws Joker through a table. And then he figures that he rescues her. And then the second one that I thought about was the Gray Ghost, because Adam West played the Gray Ghost. So it was a nice tribute to Adam West, as far as, since he was kind of like the campy 1960s Batman,
We lost him too in the last few years, didn't we?
He lost. I think he died 5 years ago, if I'm not mistaken.
Wow.
Yeah, he died 5 years ago, but he was the Great Ghost, in that in the Batman animated series. Yeah. Yeah, so I really wanted to talk because I mean we were talking about before the show started, and it's like you could argue like my favorite Batman is Christian Bale, only because I thought he did Bruce Wayne.
He had the best movies. There's no
Yeah, he did.
question.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
he also I think did Bruce Wayne and did Batman really well.
Yeah.
I love Keaton. Obviously, he's the first dark iteration of Batman in live action. So you could debate Bale versus Keaton.
Do you know what you know what I thought was really interesting? Because I recently I was watching this. There was this YouTube video because I'm a big Christian Bale fan. Period. Not just for Batman. Like I pretty much love everything he's done. And there's this because I was a big American Psycho fan. I loved him in The Fighter because he was Dick Eklund. Like he morphed into Dick. Like I didn't think Mark Wahlberg, like he wasn't like he was just Mark Wahlberg. Like he wasn't really Mickey Ward. Like, he was just Mark Wahlberg. But Christian Bale was Dick Eklund in that movie. And there's this YouTube video of Christian Bale like kind of talking through his most iconic roles. So he does like probably 6 or 7 minutes on the Dark Knight films and on the other stuff. And I remember him saying something that I'm like, I kind of felt the same way. So I thought in the Dark Knight, I didn't think he was written that well in that it was probably the best of the 3 movies, but I didn't feel like Bruce Wayne was written that well. And he was so overshadowed by Heath Ledger.
Yeah.
So it's like Christian Bale's performance in that movie just kind of felt unremarkable. It was all about Heath Ledger. And Bale even said that he was like, and he said it in a very complimentary way to Heath. Like he wasn't like tearing down Nolan or anything, but he was like, when they were filming scenes, he's saying he was so blown away by how good Ledger was as the Joker. He was like, I feel like this is making Bruce Wayne boring because he's killing it. Right. And I kind of felt the same way watching that movie.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Nolan in The Dark Knight wanted to put more of an emphasis on Bruce Wayne because, because it's all usually about Batman, and he wanted you to like Bruce Wayne, because a lot of times you watch these movies as much as like Michael Keaton, even as Bruce Wayne, you're like, what's he put on the costume? What's that costume being put on? And I think he wanted the audience to like remember that Bruce Wayne is a different to Batman. Like, for example, the scene where he's sleeping in the boardroom, he's completely knocked out. He's in the Lamborghini driving, he pretends to drink, at his party. So those are things that he tried doing. But yeah, Heath Ledger overshadowed everybody, in that movie, in particular. So
yeah. And the other thing I didn't like about that movie was I thought that the cast switch from Katie Holmes to Maggie Gyllenhaal, I just like, and Maggie Gyllenhaal, fine actor, but I just thought she was not good in that role. And it was like, I don't know, it just felt so weird. I'm like, wait, why were you a different person in the previous movie? And I don't know, like that kind of threw, for as much as I love that movie, there's a couple things I didn't like about it.
Yeah, well, I heard, obviously, I know through the internet, and also from what I'm seeing, Katie Holmes was dating Tom Cruise at the time. And as much as I like Tom Cruise, he's not going to promote his girlfriend's movie when he has a movie coming out. So she was in Batman Begins, and at the same time, I think it was World of Worlds was coming out around the same time period. And Katie Holmes is like, oh, you should see Tom's movie while they're both competing against each other. You should see Tom's movie. He's so great in it. And not once did Tom Cruise ever say, watch Batman Begins, at all. So I think the studio got upset with her that she basically is going on talk shows promoting Tom's movie over Batman Begins. So I think that happened. So I think she was originally fired. I don't remember, allegedly. I don't remember the internet says whatever it wants. I think she was originally fired, but the story just makes more sense to me. And then they wanted to bring her back. They said, we'll let bygones be bygones. They wanted to bring her back again because of continuity. And she said no. And she decided to do, which was the worst career decision of her life, that bank heist movie, I think, with Queen Latifah.
Ooh, I remember the movie. I didn't see it, so I couldn't tell you. It looked terrible. I couldn't tell you if it was or not.
Yeah, it did poorly, so I'm assuming it was terrible.
Yeah.
And so she picked that movie over The Dark Knight. The Dark Knight ended up making like $1.4 billion. And that movie made like 50 cents.
And by the way, another cool thing that Bale said in that YouTube video, you should definitely look for it. You could probably find it relatively easily. He was already being pretty renowned as a good actor. Like, being Batman kind of made him way more famous, but he was already highly regarded for like American Psycho and some of the other films that he had done up to that point. But he even said, he's like, I wanted to prove that I'm such a good actor that I can play Batman and not be like typecast and ruin my career. Because if you remember, that was one of the big reasons why Keaton didn't want to do anything after Batman Returns. Was he's like, I don't just want to be Batman. Like, I don't want people just to remember me only as Batman and I'm just typecast and a one-trick pony. Like, he wanted to get out. Like, he wanted to get out and branch. It's like, I made my money making these movies. I want to branch out. I don't want to be Batman for the rest of my life. Whereas Bale, you know, he did a full trilogy. He was like, I want to prove that I can be Batman and still get these crazy roles, because everything he's in, he's just brilliant in.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Also, you knew that working with Christopher Nolan has a history of recasting actors he's worked with. That was a smart career move as well.
Prestige is so good.
Yeah. I did see that one. It's been a while though, but I did see that one as well. So it's funny though, Josh Hartnett almost got that role of Batman, but he didn't want to be typecasted. You know,
that's the thing. No, guys are afraid of that, and that was why, like, when Michael Keaton was in Birdman, they kind of poke fun at that, right? Because it was basically like sort of like a parody of him as Batman. And he's like, I need to make a Broadway show. I want to get away from being Birdman. So I thought that was kind of a nice callback to that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But Josh Hartnett also forgot the same thing I just told you. He said, crap, man, I could have been in a lot more movies because Nolan recast his actors. Like, he's recasted Tom Hardy, he's recasted, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, he's recast Christian Bale. So I could have done more movies with this guy if I would have at least tried out for the role, because it was him, Henry Cavill, believe it or not, it was Christian Bale, Henry Cavill, Josh Hartnett, Cillian Murphy, I think is his name, the guy that ended up playing Scarecrow.
Yeah, I think it's pronounced Killian, but yeah,
Cillian Murphy,
he's brilliant.
Oh yeah,
and I remember that story where he kind of like auditioned to be Batman, but then I think it was Nolan that like kind of convinced him, like, hey, like, I want to use you something different. He ended up being Scarecrow, and because I guess Bale was just better at that part. But I mean, I think Killian could have done it. Like, if Cillian Murphy I think he could have actually been a really good Batman. Like, I could see him in that role.
Yeah, if you go on YouTube, you can find the auditions. They're all wearing the Michael Keaton costume.
Wow. Oh, they're wearing the Keaton costume?
Yeah, they're wearing the Keaton costume.
Oh,
Yeah,
I gotta go watch that. That's
fantastic. Definitely. Alex, I don't want to take up any more of your time. Thank you so much for joining us here at 305 Sports Now. I greatly appreciate it. All right. If you enjoyed this interview with and Alex's perspective, you could find him occasionally on WQAM 560 WQAM radio. And also, if you want to see him all the time or hear him all the time, please look up Locked On Canes. All right. You can find it on any podcasting platform, Odyssey, Spotify, Google, Apple, any podcasting platform you desire. Or if you just want to watch his episodes as well, you can find them on YouTube as well. It's absolutely free. Just search up Lock On Canes and you will see Mr. Donno performing. Alex, thank you so very much. All right. I greatly appreciate it.
My pleasure. The Canes talk and the Batman talk.
Awesome. Yeah, man. Yeah. Have a little levity sometimes, All right. Once again, if you like what you heard, please do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to 305 Sports Now. Once again, I am Will. Stay safe. God bless. See you soon.